The topic that we have right now is, why does India fare miserably in the Olympics? And I think that it could be a very important uh, group discussion topic this year, because the Olympics in the Brazil Olympics this year, we did not fare so well as we had expected our athletes to do, right? So, if you are given a topic as to why India does not fare well in the Olympics, then what kind of argument should you create, right? So, if I were in your shoes, I would start my opening statement would be somewhat like this. It's difficult to digest the fact that a country with a population of more than 1.25 billion has not been able to excel in a single major world sport, let alone the Olympics. And it's a fact, right? If you look at this at the major world sport, then we say that football, followed by, I think, the other event is the Olympics. These two are the major world sport events, and India has fared well in neither of these. And then I directly say that the problem lies at two levels. The first is society, of which I consider the education system to be very much a part, and the second is the government. So again, it's a very important point, because you must understand that any kind of change, you have two people who come together to bring that change. One is the government and the other is society. They both have the roles to play, and without each contributing its own share, change can never happen. So, if you want a change in society, then society also must come along with the government and bring that change. And in any kind of group discussion, you can always analyze these kind of topics from many perspectives. One is, of course, the societal perspective, the other is governance perspective, legal perspective, then you have the political perspective of that particular issue, and you have the environment perspective. So you must learn to dissect a particular topic from many perspectives. The economic perspective is also there. So you can always say that India does not do well in the Olympics because we are lacking in A, B, C, and D. We don't have this, we don't have that. We are a developing country. Our priorities are economic welfare and not sports excellence. But we will accordingly have to go ahead and create an argument, because if you look at the medal winners in the Olympics, then you will find that most of the developed nation, they always come in the top 10. You have China, you have USA, you have UK, you have Australia, you have Germany, Italy, you have Japan, you have France, right? So you'll find that most of the developed nations of the world, they are there in the top 10, 15. And after that, usually most of the nations, they have one or two medals. So there is not a single example in which economically underdeveloped or developing country has come in the top 10 of the Olympic events. But then you might say that Brazil also is economically developing country, but in football it ranks amongst the top teams of the world. Argentina also ranks amongst the top team of the world, though it is an economically developing country. So it's not necessary that to excel in a world sport you have to be an economically developed country, and only then you can excel. China is a very good example. The economic situation of China today and the economic situation of China in 1980 is very different. And still, if you look at at China's performance in after the 1980 Moscow Olympics, it has been doing consistently quite well. So there could be many reasons as to why India does not do well in the Olympics. You can say that the first reason is we are economically underdeveloped or developing. Second thing is that the level of nutrition that we have is not up to the right standard. We don't have that kind of the people in the country don't have that kind of height and structure, which is meant for basically for the purpose of sports, right? So let's it says that first I will discuss the problem that we have in our society. We give overwhelmingly small disproportionate importance to academics, right? And why we give overwhelmingly disproportionate importance to academics is precisely this, because people in society feel that good academics means a passport to good job, and therefore parents usually, they are so much focused about their children doing well in academics that they often consider sports to be a secondary factor. And many a student who is good in sport, he has to give up sport. Why? Because parents tell them that your first priority is studies and not sports. And you must remember the topic of the group discussion. The topic says why India does not do well in the Olympics. So you cannot justify and give reasons as to why it is not doing. I mean, you cannot say that yes, we can do well, but you have to give specific reasons to why we are lagging behind. It says that despite almost 6 decades of independence and 2.5 decades of economic liberalization, we as a nation and as people have barely moved ahead. We are yet to free our minds of our deep rooted irrational beliefs, regressive conventions, and blind trends. The root cause of this widespread malaise is that deep within our people are pathologically insecure. To them, a job that guarantees lifelong security is far more valuable than career, and that is uncertain and apparent, and that is uncertain and apparently has no tangibility whatsoever. So the speaker says that the root cause of why we give so much of less importance to sports and to other things is because we are very insecure. To us, a job that guarantees lifelong security is far more valuable than a career that is uncertain. Sports is treated as a career which is uncertain and has no tangibility. And usually people think that the and there is a reason behind, because generally you will find that in India, apart from cricket, there is apart from cricket as a sport, there is no encouragement for any kind of sport. You will find that the government does not provide this the social security, the economic security to the budding aspirants, unless and until you belong to a very very rich family. You don't have that access to uh, high class and top class training facilities, right? So sports almost becomes you can say the luxury of the upper class people, right? It says here, as a result of this, even if the child is born with some talent for a particular sport, that talent goes entirely unnoticed or is wasted due to lack of encouragement and guidance. So he says that due to lack of encouragement and guidance, the entire thing is wasted. And this happens because people think the parents in society think that sports basically means that no career. If you are good in studies, if you have some kind of skill, you might get a job. Even if it means a very mean job, a very inferior job, still you have some kind of opportunity. But if you go in sports, you have no opportunity whatsoever. Then the author further says that the second reason why in India we always look down on physical labor, as a nation, we have become averse to it. Have you ever wondered why we always produce better batsmen than bowlers? Because parents are so indulgent that they would spare no effort to ensure that their children do not take the slightest physical effort. How often do we see such basic sports as cycling, swimming, running being encouraged by Indian families or Indian schools? Now, this is a big problem. You talk about economic things, you talk about training facilities, but you must understand that today in our country, even in the most advanced urban areas, how many parents encourage children to go for cycling, to go for swimming, to go for running? No. Right from a very young age, parents are very much concerned about children developing all those computer skills, all those extra talent by which they can get into some prestigious college or some prestigious institution by where they can get to a very good multinational company or get a very good job. So right from a very very young age, parents particularly start laying down plans for the child. Their entire focus is that he should get so and so CGPA or so and so grade, or he should be able to top in the class, he should do the best, forgetting that his child might be very good in some other kind of activity. And this negligence from the parents results basically in talents that are nipped in the bud. And it's a classic case. Parents are so indulgent that they feel that any kind of manual labor, any kind of hard work, any kind of physical pain is not good for my child. And that's why we never see in our town children cycling and going to school, or swimming and going to school, or running, or any kind of those activities. And these are the very basic things that actually create your physical stamina for a sport such as athletics. And then you have also the argument in which people say that Indians are not physically strong. The martial races have always been there in India. So when you say the martial races, the races that can fight, right? The strong defense force that we have suggests that if we cannot, suggests that if we can have enough strong men to fight on our borders, on the peaks of Siachen Glacier, then we certainly can find men strong enough to win medals in the Olympics. Of course, you have such a huge army. The second or the third largest army of the world is of India. We have people in the armed forces, right? They are tough, they are mentally tough, they are physically tough. So if you have people in the armed forces who are physically and mentally tough, why can't you have people physically and mentally tough, good enough to win Olympic medals? Right. So the problem is that strength alone is not enough. Such people must be trained, they must be made competitive, and they must really be strong enough to put a brave front at the highest level. So what we have seen in this particular part is that it is not the government alone that can improve things. People also, society as a whole also must focus on this. Parents must ensure that their children, they eat the right kind of diet, they do the right kind of physical activity, so they become taller, they become stronger, and by the time they enter their early teens, we can actually mold them. We can actually, because sports is something for which you cannot wait for the child to turn 20 or 25 and then you start training him for sports. Sports training must start at a very, very young age. So you must identify the talent at a very, very young age. Secondly, the moment the child starts growing, he becomes conscious, you must provide him the right kind of nutrition so that the body develops for that particular kind of activity. All these things must be done at a very, very young age, and that is where the government comes into picture. So in the discussion you have to bring 2 points. These 2 points are very important. First is the contribution from society, from parents, and the contribution from the government. In this page we have seen that the society is very much responsible, because so long as the parents don't give that freedom, that liberty to their children to go ahead and do these kind of things, we will never have that kind of foundation wherein we can create great athletes. Let's go and see what kind of contribution the government can make. In the earlier part we said that we have strong people, we have people who can be trained, who can be developed, who can be made competitive, right? We gave the example of the armed forces. Now who will take the responsibility of that training, that development? And that is where the government has a very important role to play. The second part of the discussion is about the government's role. So while you are discussing the group, while you're discussing this topic, you can put 2 points. One is basically the contribution from society, and the other is the contribution from the government, right? And then it says, just as we have 5-year plans that focuses on economic developments, so we can have 5-year plans that exclusively focus on sports development, right? So the government has economic development as the agenda, because this will help the upliftment of the people, of the masses. Similarly, the government can also have 5-year plans for sports development. The way you have the bureaucracy that administers the complete entire country, you can have basically a bureaucracy who is exclusively responsible for sports development. And a very good example has been given here. If the Jawahar Navu Vidyalaya can be an alternate system of schools for the bright students of India, then a similar alternate system of schools can be set up for the physically gifted students. And Jawahar Navu Vidyalaya has been a success. The function of the Vidyalaya is to spot talent at a very young age and provide them all kinds of facilities at a bare minimum price, right? And if this kind of thing can work in our country, then we can also have some kind of sports infrastructure on similar lines. Sports infrastructure needs a massive capital investment. We must replicate the China model, a model that spots talent at a very young age and then takes up the responsibility of grooming that talent without expecting any financial incentives in return. And this is very important, because sports investment is not something that is going to give you economic returns. It is something that brings glory and fame. It says a scheme such as this might be an overwhelmingly additional burden on the exchequer. But that is how things work. After all, we don't expect financial returns by allocating huge share of general budget to the defense expenses. So again, we are giving example, the defense expenses, you don't expect any kind of economic returns from that, right? Similarly, any kind of investment in the sport infrastructure should be done without expecting any kind of economic returns. If national security is such a concern, then shouldn't national glory be just as grave a concern? Picking talent at a young age, grooming them, training them, and securing them financially, all can be done if the government shows the willingness and people show the enthusiasm. The same principle is at work in the armed forces. You pick, you train, you pay, irrespective of whether we have wars or not. So the point that we are discussing here is that the society has a role to play, the government has a role to play. Society must do these kind of things, government must do these kind of things. And when these two things happen and they coincide, then development is possible, improvement is possible. We shouldn't always needlessly blame the government for the evils. One of the reasons in most of the group discussions, we directly start blaming the government. But do you think it is the government that is to be blamed for all the evils that plague our society? No. What about society as a whole? What about people as a whole? Do you think people are innocent? They are really good, and the government at the top is bad? You cannot say that always, right? Because any kind of development, and particularly social development, cannot happen without the participation of the people. The government is only a representative of society's collective will and wish, and if something is out of order, then the people in the society are as much responsible as the government that represents that society. So, in any kind of group discussion, when you are discussing, you straight away come to politicians and bureaucrats and start blaming all the people in the world except the people who are the part and the structure of that society. People must take the blame on their own selves. And the classic case would be the black economy in the country, right? You know that many people who talk about improvement, who talk about changes in others, they themselves are corrupt, and they themselves indulge all kind of malpractices. So how can you have a better society? The RBI, the government is trying to make changes, right? The government is trying to make changes, and by demonetizing it, it's trying to improve the state of the people in society, the economic state of people in society. And the government then gives money to the bank managers so that they can basically dispense it to the people, and the bank managers are corrupt. So if the bank managers are corrupt and they are themselves indulging in all kinds of malpractices, then how can you blame the government? Aren't these bank managers, these people who are so well qualified, are very much part of society? They are, right? Just as you and I are a part of that society. So they are to be blamed for that, and society is to be blamed for all the ills that plague that society. To improve the state of sports in society, the people, the government, and the rich private organizations must come together. The government's effort alone won't suffice, and the people's enthusiasm without appropriate awareness won't be enough. To change society, everyone must take a share of the responsibility. And this is precisely why this group discussion is very important. Because when you say that why India is not winning medals in the Olympics, it is not just because the government is not supporting the athletes, or there is no proper infrastructure, there is no proper investment. That part is definitely true, but also at the same time you cannot ignore that parents, that society itself does not give much importance to it. And why? Because we feel insecure. So there are some reasons that the government is responsible for. There are some reasons which society also is responsible for, and they must come together to bring any kind of change.